So picture this for a second. You're looking at this massive, heavy banner, and staring right at you from the left side of the canvas is the unmistakable historical face of Vladimir Lenin.
Right. Very intense imagery.
Yeah, his eyes are just locked intensely on the viewer. But then on the right side, kind of bleeding directly into the mob today, is this shadowed contemporary figure. And right underneath them both, printed in this like blood red text, is just a single question.
Just one question.
Yeah, a new Lenin.
Wow.
Right. It's intense. So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a wildly provocative essay today called Communist America, and it's subtitled The Fukushima Effect in American Politics. It was written by Levne Moten and published by Uncompressed Thinking.
And, before we even unpack a single sentence of this text, we really need to set some extremely firm ground rules for this deep dive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the source material we're examining today, it makes some intense, sweeping, and honestly highly controversial claims about modern American politics. So we need to be clear, we are not taking sides here.
No, definitely not.
We aren't approaching this from a left-wing perspective, nor are we, coming at it from a right-wing perspective. We are absolutely not endorsing any of the viewpoints or the predictions or the political critiques presented in this essay.
Right, exactly. Our sole job today is just to neutrally map out the author's arguments. I mean, think of us as your tour guides through a very complex architectural blueprint.
I like that analogy.
Yeah, we're basically going to separate the mechanics of the author's theory from all the everyday political noise, just so you can understand the exact specific case being made. And, if you're listening to this, you might already be rolling your eyes thinking, oh, this sounds like partisan fear-mongering.
Sure, which is a natural reaction.
Right. But the author is pointing to a very specific historical and mechanical overlap that really demands a closer look.
It does. Because Moten's core premise, well, it's a severe warning. He argues that America is currently facing a unique compound political threat. And it's a threat he claims that both sides of the political aisle, Democrats and Republicans, are just dangerously underestimating right now.
Both sides, yeah.
Yeah, he isn't just arguing that one radical ideology is gaining ground. He's arguing that two completely different historically opposed forces are colliding. And that collision, it's creating something entirely unprecedented.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the author uses a very specific, honestly terrifying historical event to explain how this collision actually works on a mechanical level. He calls it the Fukushima effect.
Right, the 2011 nuclear disaster in Japan.
Exactly. The text breaks down the physical mechanics of that disaster to build this foundational metaphor. Because he points out that the nuclear plant was actually, incredibly well designed to handle natural disaster.
It really was.
It had these massive, robust defenses built specifically to withstand a major earthquake. And separately, it had a massive seawall designed to protect it against a tsunami.
But the catastrophic failure happened because of the sequence, right? The combination of those two events. The text details how the earthquake struck first.
Right.
And that seismic event disrupted the outside electrical power flowing into the plant. But, the plant had a backup plan for that.
But then the earthquake triggered the tsunami.
Exactly. That colossal wave breached the seawall and just drowned the critical backup systems, the diesel generators that were absolutely necessary to keep those nuclear reactors cool.
So the plant was essentially fortified against threat A, and it was fortified against threat B. But when A and B struck simultaneously...
Total cascading failure.
Right. The defenses that were perfectly adequate for single isolated threats were just completely overwhelmed by their combination. The earthquake knocked down the shield and the tsunami delivered the fatal blow.
And the author maps that exact physical disaster onto his view of the American political system.
Right. So what are the two disasters in his theory?
Well, according to Moten, the two natural disasters merging in America today are, on one hand, secular communist ideology, and on the other hand, radical anti-Western religious ideology.
Wow. Okay.
And the text is very specific here. He is talking about a radicalized strain of a 1,400-year-old religious tradition that inherently rejects Western democratic values. His argument is that these two forces, well, they're dangerous enough in isolation. But when they merge politically, they don't just add together.
They amplify each other.
Yes, they amplify one another in ways our democratic defenses are entirely unprepared to handle.
It's kind of like mixing two common household chemicals, right? Like perfectly manageable on their own, maybe you use them to clean, but when they interact, they create this highly toxic lethal gas.
That's a great way to look at it.
It's like building a lethal engine. On its own, a pile of pistons and gears can't run you over. That's the communist ideology. It provides the mechanical structure, the machinery of wealth redistribution and political control. But a pool of combustible fuel just sitting on the ground, that can't drive anywhere either. That's the religious extremism it provides, the explosive fuel, the blind moral absolutism.
But you put the fuel inside the machinery.
Exactly. You suddenly have a functioning engine that can plow right through democratic norms. But, if this combination is so obviously lethal, why is the political right in America seemingly, popping champagne over the Democrats moving further left? Why aren't political commentators seeing this reaction happening?
Well, the text spends a significant amount of time analyzing that exact reaction, or say the lack of a defensive reaction from the political establishment. Neimotin points a very sharp finger at the political wing right here.
Interesting.
Yeah, he specifically calls out conservatives, mainstream Republicans, and even suggests Donald Trump and his strategists might be falling into this trap. He labels these political commentators and strategists as tragically delusional.
Tragically delusional. That is a really aggressive phrase. What exactly is the delusion he's talking about?
The delusion is based on a deeply ingrained assumption the right makes about the American voter. The author observes conservatives watching the Democratic Party undergo this deep shift toward the far left right.
Yeah, the mainstream legitimization of socialism and communist-adjacent ideas.
Exactly. But instead of treating this as an existential threat, the right is making these giddy, confident predictions.
Like it's a good thing for them.
Right. They believe this leftward shift will alienate the average voter, destroy the Democratic Party from the inside out, and just automatically produce a massive landslide Republican victory in the midterms.
So they basically think the problem is self-correcting. They assume the political pendulum will just naturally swing back to the center because America is, at its core, a capitalist country.
And the text argues this prediction rests on a fundamentally flawed psychological assumption. The right assumes that American workers, and Neimotin purposefully uses that Marxist terminology there.
Right, workers.
Yeah, that workers, along with the broader middle class, possess an inherent historical loyalty to capitalism. The conservative logic dictates that because the free market has historically generated American prosperity, the working class will just look at creeping socialism, instinctively recognize its historical failures, reject it outright, and automatically vote to protect capitalism.
And Neimotin disagrees with that.
Strongly. He calls this assumption dangerously naive.
See, I want to push back on that conservative assumption for a second, too, just looking at fundamental human behavior, because, people do not walk into a voting booth and vote for abstract economic systems.
No, they really don't.
You don't vote for a textbook definition of Adam Smith's capitalism or Karl Marx's socialism. You vote for immediate relief. You vote for immediate promises. What is going to make your life easier right now, this month, when your rent is due?
Exactly.
Especially, and the text highlights this perfectly, if a charismatic leader stands at a podium and tells you that someone else, someone wealthier than you, is going to foot the bill.
And that is the exact psychological insight Neimotin is highlighting here. Capitalism may have historically created enormous, unprecedented prosperity in the United States, but prosperity in the past does not automatically guarantee loyalty in the present.
No, of course not.
Dissatisfaction is a far more powerful human emotion than historical gratitude. When people are struggling with inflation, housing costs, or medical debt, they aren't thinking about the ideological purity of the free market. They are looking for a lifeline.
So how exactly has this lifeline been weaponized historically? Because if people vote for promises rather than systems, how does a radical ideology actually convince a population to willingly hand over their political power?
To answer that, Neimotin takes the listener backward in time to establish a direct historical parallel. He points straight at Russia's October Revolution in 1917.
Okay, back to the source.
Right. And the text draws a very careful, deliberate distinction between two historical figures here, Karl Marx and Vladimir Lenin.
Right, so we're talking about the philosopher sitting in a library versus the revolutionary actually standing on a tank.
That's a perfect way to put it. Marx is described in the text as this clever, sage-looking political and economic theoretician. Marx spent his life analyzing systems. He created the ideological weapon, right?
The theory.
Yes. He wrote the dense philosophical theory about class struggle and the inevitable collapse of capitalism. But a dense philosophy book doesn't overthrow a government.
No.
Lenin is the one who actually weaponized it. Lenin was the shrewd, charismatic, ruthless leader who stripped away the academic jargon and turned that abstract theory into a practical, street-level program for seizing political power.
So let's unpack the mechanism of how Lenin actually did that, because he didn't, stand out there and read Das Kapital to starving peasants, did he?
No, not at all. He bypassed the abstract theory entirely and appealed directly to the immediate, desperate needs of the workers and soldiers. The text notes that Lenin promised them incredibly tangible things.
Like what?
Bread for their families, peace from a brutal world war, land to farm, and direct control over their own future. He operationalized the core communist principle, which Neimotin cites directly in the text. From each according to his ability, to each according to his needs.
Okay, stop right there, because we really need to ELI 5 this, like I'm 5, why that specific quote is so intoxicating. Put yourself in the shoes of a starving Russian peasant in 1917, or, honestly, even a modern American drowning in inescapable student debt. The phrase, "to each according to his needs," sounds like ultimate salvation.
It really does.
It tells the listener, your struggles are not your fault, the system is rigged against you, and we're going to forcefully rebalance the scale so you have enough to survive. It essentially weaponizes empathy.
That's exactly it.
Lenin promised that the new system would finally give the workers exactly what they desperately needed. And, as the author ominously notes, history shows us the horrific reality of how that utopian promise actually ended.
Right. But Neimotin doesn't just leave this psychological mechanism in the history books of 1917. He brings this exact Marxist-Leninist playbook crashing into the modern American political landscape, and he names specific names.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
It does. He points to a growing group of contemporary politicians, explicitly calling out Zoran Mamdani, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Rashida Tlaib, and Hakeem Jeffries.
Let's pause on those names. Why those specific four? Because Neimotin is separating these figures from traditional old-school Democrats, right, like John F. Kennedy or Bill Clinton.
Yes, very deliberately.
Because traditional liberals typically argue for a stronger social safety net within a capitalist system. They want a fairer slice of the capitalist pie. But Neimotin is arguing that these modern figures are entirely different. He claims they aren't trying to slice the pie differently. They are actively trying to dismantle the oven.
That's a great analogy. He argues that these politicians, and a rapidly expanding coalition like them, are gaining massive political ground using the exact same basic structural appeal that Lenin used. They are running a deeply historical playbook on a modern electorate.
So break down the mechanics of that modern playbook for us. How do you convince an American voter in the 21st century to support a Marxist-adjacent platform without them realizing they are doing it?
The author outlines it as a subtle four-step psychological process.
Okay, what's step one?
Step one, offer an overwhelming amount of free benefits, free goods, and free services. The author specifically notes that Mamdani's local political success was largely driven by his promises of free state-funded goods and services.
All right, what's step two?
Step two, give the voters a villain. You identify capitalism, the wealthy, and the structural establishment as the singular root source of ordinary people's everyday problems. You take generalized dissatisfaction and give it a highly specific, wealthy target.
Ah. And step three is where the trap closes, I'm assuming. Once you have established the villain, you promise to systematically transfer wealth and political power away from that wealthy class directly into the hands of the workers, the voters.
Exactly. And step four is the most crucial part of the entire operation, the packaging.
So it's sold.
Right. You never present this comprehensive program as a rigid, historical communist ideology. You strip away the scary historical labels. You present it to the public simply as fairness, equity, and justice.
Wow.
You methodically transform everyday dissatisfaction into deep grievance. You escalate that grievance into a sense of righteous entitlement, and you weaponize that entitlement into a demand for total political control.
You know, if we look at the psychology of the modern voter through that lens, it completely validates the author's critique of the Republican establishment we talked about earlier.
How so?
Well, a charismatic political movement running this highly emotional, grievance-based playbook can easily overwhelm a voter's passive theoretical loyalty to a historical economic system like capitalism. I mean, if someone offers to pay off your mortgage today, you aren't going to worry about the macroeconomic implications 10 years from now.
Precisely. This is exactly why Neimotin believes the American political system is so vulnerable. The defenses meant to protect capitalism rely on logic, history, and long-term economic thinking. The Marxist-Leninist playbook relies on immediate emotion, grievance, and the promise of instant relief. And emotion almost always beats abstract logic in a voting booth.
Okay, wait. I'm stuck on a massive historical paradox here, going back to the source text.
What's that?
If this playbook is identical to the one used in the Russian Revolution, we have a major problem with the author's theory. During the Russian Revolution, the Bolsheviks declared religion an absolute enemy of the state, right? Marx famously called religion the opiate of the masses.
He did, yes.
The communists actively attempted to eradicate it, burning churches and executing priests. So how on earth does Nemotin justify claiming that modern left-wing Marxism is somehow teaming up with ancient religious extremism? Those are oil and water? They should be tearing each other apart.
What's fascinating here is how Nemotin returns to the Fukushima metaphor to explain this exact contradiction. He argues that the modern American movement has a unique, terrifying amplifier that simply did not exist in revolutionary Russia.
An amplifier?
Yes. According to the text, radicalized parts of the American political left are quietly, but willingly, incorporating radical religious ideology, specifically the 1,400-year-old tradition we mentioned earlier, which carries a deeply ingrained, powerful anti-Western current.
But we need to reiterate the distinction the author makes here, just for absolute clarity so people don't misunderstand the text. He is not talking about average, everyday religious believers peacefully practicing their faith.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Nemotin explicitly clarifies that. He is specifically targeting religious extremism that has mutated into a militant political force. He is talking about an absolutist ideology that fundamentally rejects Western democratic values, things like free speech, secular governance, and individual liberty, all while cynically utilizing those exact Western democratic institutions to gain power and influence.
Okay, so we have secular, atheistic, left-wing Marxist ideology on one side, and we have ancient, absolutist, radical religious extremism on the other.
Yes.
Philosophically, they are contradictory, but Nemotin says when they merge politically, they become that single, cascading Fukushima force. Going back to our engine metaphor, how does this mechanical synthesis actually function? Why don't they just destroy each other?
Well, they don't destroy each other because they are currently engaged in a symbiotic marriage of convenience. Each ideology provides exactly what the other lacks, creating a perfectly balanced machine of opposition.
How does the text break down that division of labor?
Like this. Communism supplies the modern economic grievance. It provides the intellectual framework for wealth redistribution, the academic legitimacy on college campuses, and the actual bureaucratic machinery necessary for political control in a Western system.
The pistons and the gears of the engine?
Yeah.
So what does the religious extremism pour into the gas tank?
The religious extremism supplies a fierce ancient identity. It provides an unshakable sense of moral absolutism, a deeply rooted belief that your political cause is not just policy, but is divinely mandated.
Which is incredibly powerful.
And most dangerously, it supplies a relentless, uncompromising determination. It brings a zealotry that extends far beyond the boundaries of ordinary day-to-day political compromise. Traditional politicians compromise because they want to win the next election, right?
Yeah, that's the game.
Religious extremists do not compromise because they are playing on a cosmic timeline.
Wow. The stakes of this synthesis, if Nemotin is correct, are genuinely staggering. You look at the text, and he points out that Soviet communist rule lasted 74 years. That was 74 years of gulags, artificial famines, and immense global suffering, and that was just based on a secular, bureaucratic ideology.
Right, and the author argues that this new hybrid American version could be infinitely worse. If you fuse communist economic machinery and political tactics with a 1,400-year-old religious tradition driven by its most radical elements bringing a fanatical, even suicidal determination to win,
Yeah.
the resulting regime would be radically different and far more durable than the bureaucratic communism Russia experienced.
It is the ultimate lesson of the Fukushima disaster, realized on a national scale. A democratic society might be perfectly prepared to resist the economic arguments of Marxism. It might be perfectly prepared to secure its borders against religious extremism.
On their own.
Right. But it can still catastrophically fail when those two completely distinct threats arrive at the exact same time, reinforce one another's blind spots, and just completely overwhelm the democratic seawalls that were only ever designed to confront them separately.
Which brings us to the author's final, desperate plea to the American public. Nemotin issues a stark warning to everyone across the political spectrum.
Who is he talking to?
Everyone. Republicans and Democrats, liberals and conservatives. He says they all must refresh their Western brains.
Refresh their Western brains. I like that.
The political class has to stop assuming that American history is a magic shield. They must stop assuming that socialism, communism, and religious extremism will just automatically discredit themselves in the public square before a desperate populace votes for their utopian promises.
History does not guarantee that Americans will recognize the danger in time to stop it. So what does this all mean? Where does this leave us right now, looking at the politicians on our screens today? Because the essay ends on an incredibly chilling conclusion.
It really does.
Moten looks at the current crop of figures he named: Jeffries, AOC, Tlaib, Mamdani, and he actually concedes that these specific individuals may have their personal limitations. They might not be the grand mastermind architects of America's downfall.
Right, but he argues that their individual limitations should offer us zero comfort.
Because their true danger isn't in their current power. Their true danger lies in the fact that they are preparing the political ground. By normalizing these extreme tactics, by relentlessly running this Marxist-Leninist playbook of grievance, villainizing capitalism, and offering free promises disguised as fairness, they are tilling the ideological soil.
Head of the stage.
Exactly. They are preparing the environment for someone far more capable. A leader who combines Marx's ideological purity with Lenin's ruthless political skill, strategic brilliance, and overwhelming charisma. Someone who could harness this new, amplified engine and inflict immense, irreparable damage to the Republic. As the author warns at the very end, watch out, because we may wake up tomorrow and discover a new Lenin standing at the podium.
It's a sobering thought, and it raises an essential philosophical question, one that builds on everything Moten has laid out in this essay, and it is something we want to leave you, the listener, to grapple with on your own today.
Yeah, think about this.
If a democratic society's defenses predictably fail when two completely opposing forces like secular Marxism and religious absolutism temporarily unite against Western democratic values, how does an open society defend itself against that alliance without abandoning the very democratic freedoms it is trying to protect?
That is the ultimate paradox of a free society. How do you stop the machinery and the fuel from coming together to build this lethal engine when your entire system is legally and culturally designed to let all parts and all people move freely? It is a heavy, almost impossible question, and it is exactly why texts like Moten's demand such careful, rigorous unpacking. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive, and we will see you next time.